Hello, class, and welcome to our review of the Writing Logically, Thinking Critically readings for day 2, pages 1 to 17. I thought everybody's doing a great job uh, after reading the discussions um, and your reading review quiz assignments. Whenever you come across bold-faced words in the textbook, both Writing Logically, Thinking Critically, and Reading and Writing About Literature, I will ask you to define those words and provide an example in a sentence or two. Um, why? Because you don't really understand something until you can explain it to someone else. Remember, you can use the definitions from the book, you can use definitions from your own personal experiences, examples from your own personal experiences, things of that nature. You can use the examples from the book. The important thing is that after you do the readings, you comprehend that you understand these terms, concepts, and ideas because we're going to apply them to our critical thinking skills, right? To our critical thinking ideas related to writing, analyzing literature, and specifically analyzing the Shakespearean tragedies this semester. Now, you may say, why are we reading those tragedies? Because the characters make horrible decisions. How could they have better used critical thinking skills to avoid making those illogical decisions? It's one of the main things we're going to focus on when we apply the concepts and strategies from this book to our analysis of literature, and when we apply the concepts and strategies from this book to our own writing documents so that we can demonstrate that we are thinking logically and critically. Why? Because, as it says on page 1, our writing is our thinking made visible. Just like when we speak, it's our thinking made audible. Okay, so it's very, very important um, that you recognize the importance of the words you choose. Now, the good thing with writing is you can go back and proofread. You can make edits, you can make revisions. With speaking, a lot of times you can't take back what you said, right? What do we all make about that whole idea? Just kidding, right? When people say, oh, JK, I was just kidding. Is it that they said something that they wish they could take back, but they know they couldn't? So they're trying to redefine it as a joke because they didn't get the response they wanted? I don't know. It's one of those expressions that I think you're going to find yourself thinking about more after taking this class, after reading this book, um, if you find yourself saying that or if you find other people saying that. I was just messing with you. I was just playing with you. I was just kidding. Interesting. It's an interesting concept when we think about it. It's kind of like when you see someone and they greet you with a question, right? Now just acknowledging someone's presence is one thing. Hello, hola, aloha, right? There's many words in many languages to just acknowledge that you see someone. It's, I acknowledge your presence, hello. But when somebody says hello and you say, how are you? Are you kind of suggesting that your greeting demands a response? And a lot of times people don't answer that question. They just kind of take it for granted that it's just a hi. But technically, how are you? I mean, I don't know. Maybe next time somebody asks how you're doing and you were just going to kind of say, hey, back, maybe give it to them. Give them the response. Give it what they want. Oh, you really want to know how I'm doing? Well, here, where do I begin? Let's have a seat. Let's chat. But a lot of times when people say, how are you? They don't actually want a response. They're just substituting it for a hey or a hello or a howdy or an aloha. So just kind of keep that in mind. Um, Pages 2 and 3 focus on the importance of writing. There's all sorts of quotes and references to famous writers' thoughts about writing and how it is thinking made visible. We get to our term critical thinking on page 3, the title of this class. It's very important because you don't want to think of being critical as a negative thing, right? What we want to focus on more is critical thinking meaning breaking things down into their parts, right? Discerning or discriminating thought characterized by careful analysis and judgment. Careful analysis and judgment. That's the key. And we want to have an open mind. We want to have an open mind so we can, right, consider different worldviews. It's very rare that someone is 100% right 100% of the time. And if you are, let's go to the casino, right? So having an open mind or an open worldview on page 3 is one of the first steps to critical thinking, because you want to recognize that not everybody thinks the same and not everybody has the same beliefs. And if we can have an open mind and we can respect each other, then we can work to mutually beneficial solutions. But when people say, I'm 100% right, you're 100% wrong, it's very rare that anything gets accomplished. We see this a lot, unfortunately, with politics, right? When we think of these politicians that do not want to accept the possibility that there might be another perspective, there might be another worldview, right? And again, when we think of worldviews, a lot of the times it's learned, as you could see by the cartoon on page 3. And I like that this book has the cartoons in it because, again, humor sometimes, it's kind of like that just kidding, right? And we see that when people have negative worldviews, they're usually learned, right? And it's usually right by someone, right? What that culture, families, things like that, things you read. So worldview is very important, and we want to think critically about our worldviews. And when you get to the Hamlet lecture and the lecture on Because I Could Not Stop for Death, right? From reading and writing about literature, which I'm going to make those videos next, I'll address the idea of, what's your worldview about death and grief? More importantly, too, what's your worldview on getting over it? I mean, think about Hamlet, right? He's really upset that his mom has married his uncle so soon after his father died. She doesn't seem to be grieving at all. She doesn't think it's a big deal. What's the grace period? I mean, growing up, me personally, I very rarely even contemplated dating the ex of a friend after they broke up. Not to mention, right? The sibling of your ex significant other. And what about if that person died? That's even worse. So for Hamlet, he has a very, very difficult time comprehending how both Gertrude and Claudius have gotten over it so soon. They, on the other hand, have a difficult time comprehending why he won't get over it. Anyway, more to come when we get to the Hamlet lecture, and that'll be in the next video. Well, I'll do reading and writing about literature next, and then Hamlet. So what I usually like to do is break the videos down so that time-wise they're not too long. I'd rather make multiple shorter ones than one really long one. This way, if you have to pause it in the middle, or if you forget to pause it, or if your computer goes out or something, you go back. It's not like you have to scan through a 30-minute video. I'd rather make separate videos so that it's more accessible. And hopefully that's helpful to you all as well. The idea that ideas are socially constructed on page 4 relates to this notion of worldview, right? And we have the example at the top of page 4. If you don't remember this, please go back and read page 4 again. It talks about the worldviews of 3 different women on The View, right? The television show, literally, it's called The View, which is essentially, what is it? It's their worldviews on a very a criminal situation, right? This French politician is arrested for the rape of a maid, and Barbara Walters, a white, older woman, says, oh, he must have sex addiction, which is absurd to me because having a sex addiction is something that I would think you use to get out of like cheating or something to try to get away with it, like, oh, it wasn't my fault. But to say that you have a sex addiction and rape someone to me is absurd. And I can't believe that Barbara Walters, a really respected journalist, would actually say that, right? I mean, it's absurd. Elizabeth Hasselbeck said he did it because he was a powerful man who thought he had the right to do what he wanted. Okay, that's usually why people commit crimes. Usually, not always. Whoopi Goldberg, an African American actress and stand up comedian, believed he did it because he did not consider the maid, an immigrant from Africa, a person. He thought of her as an object to serve his needs. Can you see the worldviews of these three women reflected in their interpretation of the alleged crime? I can, and I hope you can too. Right? This idea that ideas are socially constructed. And then we have the example that Henry Louis Gates, right in the middle of page 4. Once upon a time, perfectly decent folk took it for granted that watching two gladiators hack each other to death was just the thing to do on a summer afternoon. That making slaves of Africans was a good deal for all concerned. What were they thinking? And he says that when we look back on things, right, we're probably going to think that capital punishment, too, was something that we were not thinking logically about. It's an interesting thought. More on capital punishment when we get to the Hamlet lecture because, right, we can incorporate this idea of justice into our analysis of Hamlet. And capital punishment is one form of justice these days. So it's all about biases and examining your worldview and trying to eliminate those biases and maintain an open mind so you can think critically about things. Again, on page 7, skipping ahead here, comes back to the idea that writing is thinking made visible. We have the Hemingway quote, we have the Henry Miller quote. Again, famous writers sharing their ideas about writing. Now we get into the steps of writing. Hopefully, you're all familiar with brainstorming and free writing, what you do before you start writing your sentences that are going to become your paragraphs for your essays. You just kind of freely jot your ideas down in a list if it's brainstorming, or kind of like a journal or in sentences if it's free writing. Free writing is similar to stream of consciousness writing. The thing that I like too is in the section here on page 9, under the first draft in the book, Bird by Bird, some instructions on writing and life. The successful writer shares the advice that her father gave her brother when he had to write a report on birds. The father said, just take it bird by bird. And I think that's good advice, like she says, for writing in life. One step at a time, bit by bit, part by part, word by word. If you think about it, a paragraph is made up of sentences which are made up of words. So if you can write a sentence, you can write a paragraph, right? It just takes time. So don't freak out about your essays and say, oh my gosh, right? I have to sit down and just crank out a whole essay. Take it bird by bird, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. And that's what we're going to do. And next class, we're going to start thinking about how to structure, right, our outline for essay number 1, and then we'll move into, right, the idea of our pre-writing, then we'll move into the idea of constructing the intro, then we'll construct the body paragraphs, then we'll construct the conclusions, then we'll put it all together. So we will take it bird by bird, we will take it step by step, and we will constantly be looking at writing as a process, right? And revising and editing and drafting and outlining and pre-writing are all part of that process. If we turn and continue moving forward, right, on page 12, we have the next 3 bold-faced words, logos, ethos, and pathos, and they should be something that is familiar to you from taking your 100 level writing classes before this critical thinking class. Logos, L, easy to remember, logic, facts, examples, things that can be verified. Ethos, well, think of the E for ethos as ethics or character, and pathos, think of the P for pathos as emotions. So hopefully you found these words to be helpful in better understanding arguments and how to break down persuasive techniques and things of that nature. And we will pick up with the day 3 readings in our next Writing Logically, Thinking Critically video lecture. Again, always feel free to give me a ring if you have any questions. I'd be happy to pick up the phone and answer them for you. Thanks for your attention, and stay tuned for your reading and writing about literature and Hamlet videos to come.